Good evening, everybody.
Uh-oh.
All right, good evening again, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council.
Still have feedback.
I'll work out a testing. Nope. Okay, great. So welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council. It's Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. It's just a bit after 6:30. And Sasha, can we get a roll call?
Here. Here.
I'm here.
Here. And as you're able, let's rise and do our Pledge of Allegiance. Great, thank you. And before we move on to item number 2, which is public comment, I just wanted to make a few comments myself. If you notice on our agenda, we have suspended public comment via Zoom, and as was in the IJ and has happened around the county and other places, there was what we call Zoom bombing. We had some comments that were disturbing, and I wanted to just read off what the city council and what our position is, and I think Councilmember Candela wanted to say a few words too. So the Larkspur City Council speaks in solidarity that there's no space for hate speech and violent misinformation in our city. While we welcome all people of the public to participate in city council meetings, we condemn participation that introduces outright hateful language against race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or any further identities. One of our top priorities as a council and city staff is to make Larkspur inclusive and safe. We've spent many resources making our community prepared and resilient against wildfire, flooding, COVID, etc. This incident, to me, is a chance for the community to develop another form of preparedness and resilience against destructive hatred and implied violence. Let's encourage more constructive discussion. These attacks usually have no limit. Historically, they begin as anti-Semitic and racist, and then homophobic, and then they become attacks against democracy itself. As council members, we have the task of conducting city business with integrity and respect while committing to protect all people without disruptive racism and bigotry. We fully denounce the use of these harmful comments in any city council meeting. Thank you. Councilmember, Vice Mayor Candela.
Thank you. I just had a couple quick similar comments that I just wanted to make. As everybody knows, the Constitution protects freedom of speech. It's a valuable right that we all have, and it allows people to say things even if we disagree with them, such as hate speech. However, we all have that same freedom of speech, and more than a right, I almost feel like it's a responsibility that if we do hear hate speech or things that we disagree with, to use our freedom of speech to voice that we disagree with it, to say, hey, that's not okay, that our society or our town, we stand for inclusiveness and protection minorities, all the things that the mayor just said. The Washington Post used to have a tagline on it, which was "Democracy dies in darkness," and I also feel that democracy dies in silence. That democracy is based on a few fundamentals, which is that the majority of the people know the right thing, they know right from wrong, but also that the majority is actually going to do the right thing, that they're going to vote, and that they're going to stand up when they see something wrong, and they're going to use their freedom of speech to stop somebody or to voice their disagreement. If we look at some of the greatest tragedies in humankind that people have done to each other, it's not because the majority of people were evil. It's because the majority of the people were indifferent, because the majority of the people saw something they disagreed with and didn't do anything. So as a council member, I will do my best when, there's something that I see that I feel is hateful and I disagree with, to use my freedom of speech to address it. And I encourage everybody else to do the same thing. I think if we do that, we are protecting our values and protecting our democracy. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well said. So with that, any other council members? Okay, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is public comment. And again, tonight, public comment is in the chamber. If anybody wants to speak on a matter that's not agendized, please come up to the mic and just tell us your name, where you live, and
My name is Kevin Saavedra. I live in San Anselmo. I'm a trustee for the Tamalpais Union High School District, and I'm here to speak to you about our facilities master plan. But first, I got to say, I applaud you for making the decision to go away from Zoom comment. We've experienced the same sort of denigrating commentary, and the internet has helped to deteriorate that discourse. So good for you. I hope we do the same thing soon. I'm here to speak to you in person just so that you're able to see me and understand the process that we're in the middle of, which is impactful on our entire constituency and your community directly. As you may know, we are required to maintain and regularly update a facilities master plan. We went through the master plan update process recently, elicited support and input from nearly 100 community members. We evaluated the criticality of the work to be done, put that project work out to the marketplace to determine the cost to complete. As a result of that process, we are reviewing total project costs of approximately $515 million for the upgrade and repair of our building facilities. That projected cost is higher than it would have been a couple years ago for obvious reasons, and projected interest expense is up a bit, although rates are still low by any historic comparison. Our facilities need this work. TAM is 115 years old. Archie is 75. Redwood is almost 70. Not that that's old, but it's certainly, our buildings are past their useful life. Our other two campuses are approximately 30 years old. And as you know, this is mostly resides here in Larkspur. We have building infrastructure, roofs, equipment, portables that are past their useful life, classrooms and technology that are just simply not up to contemporary standards. These necessary repairs and upgrades will be funded through a bond issuance, and the costs are well in excess of what we could accomplish through our sinking fund. And note that we haven't done a major bond issuance in nearly 20 years. We're evaluating options and may consider putting a measure on the ballot in March of this next year. If we decide to do that, of course, we would come back to you to explain in more detail and provide more information. As for my personal background, it's commercial real estate finance, investment banking, and development. And this is a process I'm very familiar with. We're certainly willing to accept all the critique as we go through this process, but I definitely believe, given that this work is necessary and we're past our enrollment bulge, the time is now. If you'd like more information, it's available on a district website. If you have any specific questions, please send them to me or any of the other trustees. Our contact information is also available. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
great. Thank you, Kevin.
For the mayor, I know it's public comment, so we can't comment on this since it wasn't agendized, but I would love to have this on the agenda sometime, maybe first of the year after, because there's a lot of questions I have and I'd like to have some answers for some of them, but can't do it tonight.
If you want to send an email to the board president, I'm sure we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sometime after the holidays before it starts to ramp up.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other public comment tonight? 2 minutes. Well, actually 3 minutes tonight.
Okay, great. Hi. My name is Lee Nodowich. I am Chair of the Marin County Commission on Aging. And I'm here tonight just to kind of check in with you and let you know about the council and some of the things that we're doing. The commission is a program that was developed through a program. Excuse me, I'm not properly prepared. Anyway, we were assigned to be the voice for older adults in the county of Marin. And we speak to the Board of Supervisors. We check in with them on a regular basis. We kind of give them background on anything that's 60 plus in the Marin community. So we talked about the programs that are working well, the things that are maybe not working so well, maybe what's needed and what is needed in the future. So I wanted to come here tonight just to let you know we're here. The 60 plus community in Marin right now is almost 30% of our population. And it's projected in the next 10 to 12 years to be about 40% of the population. So we're hoping that when you folks are thinking about different programming, different rules and regulations, that you're considering older adults because they're a big part of the population. And the needs are really important to consider as well. A lot of times older adults are forgotten when we're doing programming. We do a great job with younger adults. We do a great job with children and whatnot, but older adults need to be considered. Ageism is a real issue in Marin and around the country. Isolation is a real big problem. So just keep in mind, we're out here. If there's questions or concerns and your constituents want to know where to go, a good first place is the county has a number. It's 473-INFO. It's a good place to refer people to, and they can learn about resources and maybe find solutions to their problems, whether it's housing or food and nutrition or transportation or whatnot. The other thing I want to let you know about, there is a great program out there. It's Congregate Meal Program. There are 6 meal sites throughout Marin County, and it's a great place for older adults to go to build community and also have a lunch. So we would love to let you know more about some of the programs. Maybe we'll get with your staff and maybe they can help cross promote some of these things and be a resource. And if you have questions or you need more information, we'll be happy to try to help you and think about different regulations or things to consider for older adults. So thank you for your time. Sorry, I maybe went over, but I appreciate what you're doing. And we hope to talk to you more and share some more ideas. Thank you.
Great, thank you. No, perfect time, 3 minutes. Good to see you, Lee. Any other comments? Okay, so seeing no more public comment, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is presentations and proclamations. And tonight, we'll do a review of Marin's sanitary service, the 2024 rate application. And I guess that's Jim Howison from R3.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Jim Howison. I represent R3 Consulting Group, and I am the individual that reviewed Marin Sanitary's application for this year. And I would like to just go through the presentation and explain the whole ins and out of the process. Okay, I'm stuck now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not doing good. So part of my agenda tonight is to discuss the rate adjustment methodology, how the rate compensation overview, 2024 rate adjustment itself, the rate comparison, and then open up the to questions and rate adoption. So I think the most important thing to recognize during the rate review and the services that are provided by Marin Sanitary is the rates and any increases they receive is primarily the sole source of revenue for the operations that support the collection of the refuse for the city of Larkspur. Okay. So part of those costs of services include labor, wages, benefits, fuel, processing, recycling, composting, and disposal, government fees. It's important to recognize, as I'm sure everybody is aware, that those costs seldom go down. It's always on an annual basis. They practically always go up. It's not happening again. Okay. So basically, the annual rate increase costs, it works kind of like a CPI where it's an annual increase based on indexes. Part of that is that if you look at the streamlined formula since 2020, the results of the current methodology on rate setting has actually been very stable. And actually, if you look at it on a comparative basis, very favorable to the residents of Larkspur. And the slide that I'm presenting right here is a historical presentation of those rate increases for your city. 2020 comes in at 3.99, 3.84. You got a really good break in 2020 at 0.73. 2023 is 5.45 with a 5.96. Now, just to take this in comparison, those agencies that are outside of the Marin sanitary services, we are constantly seeing increases of 9+. So the current arrangement that you have is it's a good deal. Now, the overall makeup of the compensation is accordingly. The collection operations, the trucks and everything, rate makes up 60% of the rate compensation. I apologize. Processing, recycling, disposal makes up 14.6. State and local compliance comes in at 17.0%. And actually the profit allowance that is allowed to Marin Sanitary is at 8.4%. So based on the analysis that I conducted, based on the application that was submitted by Marin Sanitary, Larkspur's rate increase is coming in at 5.96. I would like to note that within the application itself, it was very clean. There were no adjustments. The mathematics worked out. It was a very well done application. That equates to an increase of about $3.22 per month for the 32-gallon subscription. Marin Sanitary does offer a 20% discount for low-income individuals based on the PG&E Care program. And changes to the commercial rates will vary and often be avoided through better recycling and waste reduction. So there's a little bit of incentive in the commercial to be environmentally friendly. This comparison right here shows, and I apologize, Larkspur is the third green bar to the right. All the green bars are represented are those of Marin Sanitary, and those outside to the left are the rates that represent those agencies, like I said, outside of Marin. So as you can tell, you guys are doing, you guys are doing good comparatively. That's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Council members, any questions? Yes, Scott.
Thank you for that presentation. Appreciate it. The 8.4% profit, is that every year, like kind of standard? Is it a max? How is that determined?
If you look at the history of the rate increases, almost all of those come in at under 10%. But if you think about it from the perspective of the capital investment that Marin Sanitary has to do, trucks, carts, everybody knows about state mandates and everything. So the amount of investment that goes into a garbage company is quite extensive. So if you're looking at about an 8-9% return, by no stretch of the imagination can you say that's usury. It's in fact, it's a little bit on the low side, to be honest, because normally we go about 10% outside of Marin. So yeah, about 8% is about right from Marin.
And just to be clear, the other areas we've already built in. So when you're talking about wages or anything else, that's not part of that 8%. The 8% is on top of once you pay off all the increases for the wages or for gas or for trucks, there's 8.4% left over.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember.
I think this is my 10th rate discussion, so it's always gets better and better. So thank you. I know things have changed in the waste collection industry with governmental mandates and unfunded state mandates. We're all dealing with those. Are you seeing any in the future, in the next several years, that sort of in the industry they're talking about may be subjected to your business?
Actually, what we foresee in the future is probably more and more government regulations, more and more state mandates, whether it's CARB compliance with the trucks,
Yeah.
whether it's involved, I'm sure you're all aware of SB 1383, which is a long-term project. So we're not really seeing a situation where we're going to think there's going to be a reduction in state mandates. California is very progressive environmentally. And so, yeah, we don't see that happening.
And with the processing, recycling and disposal, can you just tell me, I don't know what the current status of the biofuel relationship that is happening. Is there biofuel being produced from that?
I think I'm going to have to defer to Marin Sanitary.
Okay.
On how
Well,
they're handling it.
it's okay. it was more
Or was that a
curiosity than,
general industry question.
yeah, it's sort of a general
Okay.
industry.
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of hauling companies that are going to the biofuel. They get to run their trucks off of it. Obviously, fuel costs continually go up. So that is definitely what we consider a growth area.
Okay,
so-
thanks. It's a good presentation. I don't have any other questions.
Councilmember Carroll? You're good. Okay. Just a couple of quick ones. So I'm looking at slide 5, and I think is that the right one? Yeah. So the breakdown of costs. So the rates close to 6% increase. What's the cost driver? Looks like the collection operations is granted a 5%. Is that kind of a pro forma? And then, what's pushing it up to 6%?
It's actually the recycling process.
Okay.
The price of recycling. Okay, so the material that gets processed goes onto the open market. It's basically a commodity. And commodity prices, as you know, it's oil, it's gas, and there's great fluctuation with that. Unfortunately, over the past short term, those recycling revenue has dropped. Marin Sanitary uses those revenues to offset the cost of their recycling operations. So actually, if you extract out that price fluctuation due to market forces, the average rate increase for Marin Sanitary would have been around 4%. So it's really the recycling markets tied to the commodity markets and the reduction in the value that they're getting from selling the product.
Okay. And just sorry, this is a side question, but as a refresher, looking at the rate increases, there was that dip in, was it 2021 or 22? And was that tied to the commodity prices, or I know COVID was just we were coming out of that, but what made that rate so low, the increase there?
To be honest with you, I wasn't here in 2022 at that time.
Okay.
So maybe somebody from Marin can come forward and
Okay.
discuss that. I don't have that knowledge, so I don't want to.
Okay, that's fine. And then the other thing was, when I first did this in 2020, I remember, kind of going into depth on the impact fees. Has anything changed there?
No.
So the impact fee costs and, the offsets to any road damage or anything like that has remained the same.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all for me. Yeah, so if there are no other council member questions or comments, open it up to the public. Anybody in the chamber want to ask any questions or make any comments? Oh, okay.
My name is Patty Garbarino, and I'm lucky enough to be president of Marin Sanitary Service. My father's not here. He's wishing he was, but dealing with a back issue. And I am, though, lucky enough to be here with my colleagues. Justin Wilcock is our operations manager, general manager in charge of just about everything, keeping things rolling. Jason Raleigh is our CFO and obviously can answer the financial questions. And then Ruben Hernandez, talk about state mandates. He's really stepped up It used to be something that I did alone, and that's how my hair turned color.
Mhm.
So he's taking that over now through God's grace. Just want to briefly mention what's new at Marin Sanitary Service to be able to meet those state mandates. On March 1st, we had a ribbon cutting for the optical sort system, which greatly helped us. COVID especially drove what I was proud of in terms of a contamination rate in our facility from 1% just under, which is huge, but that's the ethic of the people in Marin County in doing the sorting the proper way, and the fact that we kept a dual sort continuously going as opposed to going to the single stream. The went up to about 15%, which was unheard of. Over 15%, you go to a whole new level of permitting, which I'm terribly compliant, but that's not what I wanted to do. So the optical sort has helped quite a bit. The Tiger debagger has helped us with our compliance with SB 1383 and has allowed us to bring in massive amounts of food that can no longer be served to an individual and get that organic fraction out of the landfill, which is depending upon the science, 14 to 19% of greenhouse gas production is organic material in the landfill. And we are fully compliant with 1383. We recognize that the onus of that bill is on the jurisdictions we serve and the customers we have, but we were very well prepared to handle all of that material. Electric trucks and again, talk about regulations or mandates that come out of Sacramento. We've got a very healthy trade association that with whom we also advocate. When bills come, we do our very, very best to try to make them real. So they're actually based on technology that we know will actually work as opposed to some black box. And our trade association, the RRCC, has been a great help in that regard and helped us with CARB and the zero emission vehicles. Honestly, we think that what the future holds for us is not electric vehicles. Given the terrain that you all enjoy, that we all enjoy, getting those trucks up and down the hills just with an electric battery just will not happen. So we're really looking at studying hydrogen technology, and we hope that that's what will help us. The dip in 2022, by the way, in what our needs were, was an increase in the cardboard market. So we share the profits and losses with the jurisdictions we serve, which is new. That didn't happen up until a couple of years ago. We always rode the tide of the risk in the markets, but it was something that we were asked to do, and we're glad that we did. So that lowered the rates in 2022. On October 1st, we submitted our, my dad's not here, so I can say it was our succession plan, but maybe he's on the television watching. But we don't use that term anymore. It's a 5, 10, 20-year plan. And back to our trade association, I'm very proud of the fact that we have a next generation program. So family-owned independent hauling companies can perpetuate into the future with a course that lasts for a year. And Ruben is a graduate of that course. We've had about 14 graduates in our company. It travels throughout the state and studies different technologies in our industry, which is very dynamic, and it covers everything from those new technologies through permitting, union negotiations. They even seem to make insurance very interesting. And I hope there aren't any insurance people here, but it's a great course. Finally, we had our Customer Appreciation Day on September 24th. We had, again, about 250 people who came and took tours, and I got to go home with free compost. And with that, I'll close and encourage you all to come and take a tour. As a former special education teacher, you remember 25% of what you hear, 50% of what you hear and see, 75% of what you hear, see, and do. I'm not sure about the 100%, but, and we wouldn't make you necessarily sort unless you wanted to. So with that, it's an open invitation, and thank you very much. And thank you for this presentation as well, Jim.
Through the mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I mean, it's public comment, but Patty, if you want to
Absolutely.
put on another hat, you're here
Patty,
presenting too, so
Okay.
please.
this has nothing to do with your presentation. This is a dinner table conversation
Yeah.
that I was hoping you could help us resolve. Electric cars.
Yeah.
Say, I mean, they're still new, but electric car dies. What do we do with all those batteries?
It's a very good question. And I'm not so sure. We're not taking them at the hazardous waste facility. That's something I would imagine that goes back to the dealer, but I'm not sure. One of our concerns is the infrastructure is not there and yet ready for an entire fleet to be able to be safely.
But in
servicing
10 years, all these cars are gonna die and we have all these batteries. I'm curious if there was a
Well, and
plan.
the
of what to-
procurement of the materials to make the batteries is somewhat questionable too. So again, we really feel as though sustainably that the hydrogen technology is really going to save us. As a matter of fact, there's a wonderful, needs a new name, but there's a wonderful Congress that pulls together in Germany every other year. It's called IFOP. And they're actually running, the Germans are, and much of the technology that we have came from Northern Europe. Our hydrogen cell that's small, that's inside a garbage truck that actually doesn't need all of the charging or the back and forth to the facility can take a greater payload. So we're hoping in May to be able to go to IFOT in Germany and learn from that. We just discovered that that was going to be part of the presentation then, but we've gone all sorts of places this year, Tennessee to look at anaerobic digestion. And we do have an anaerobic digestion, as you well know, part of our food waste to energy program. And we're looking at biomass on site as well as a means to take woody material and make that into energy to fuel the trucks too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're so welcome. And talk about investments, you mentioned that. I'll just stop with the debagger was just under $1 million. A new garbage truck is upwards of 500,000. So it's quite an investment. The debagger takes anything, Catherine, from, let's say you have a pallet of milk or you have a pallet of oatmeal in a container, and it completely shreds all of it'll put all the cardboard over here, all the plastic over there, all of the oatmeal over here, and make it into that slurry that we then take down to the Central Marin Sanitation Agency and make energy from. And they're actually now positive. So they have fully energized their facility and they're getting ready to sell to Marin Clean Energy. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Patty. And I guess just looking into the chamber, any other public comments? Anybody here tonight? Questions? Good. So I'll bring it back. And yes, once again, Patty and team and MSS and Jim, thank you so much for the presentation. I think tonight there's no action. We're simply reviewing. Is that correct, City Manager? Or are we?
That's correct. There's, as you know, we're in a collective or consortium of cities that utilize R3 to do their rate analysis. And it's often a competition for when we schedule our public hearings. So we thought it would work well to do a presentation tonight, but this will come back for a full public hearing.
Okay, understood. Thank you. Okay, so with that, thank you all again. And we will close the presentation proclamation and move to item number 4, which is approval of the consent calendar. And tonight it's very, very light. We only have warrants, 1 item. Anybody on the council want to pull that item or question it? Okay, we're just flying along here. Anybody in the public, any questions or want to pull an item from consent?
No.
Okay.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I will second the approval of the
Okay,
consent calendar.
Sasha, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Carroll,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kendall,
Yes.
Mayor Paulsen.
Yes. Great. And that takes us to item number 5, which is the city manager's oral report.
Yes, council members, I had just a couple things to point out for the community and the council. First, we've been having a lot of questions, what's going on with the old dog park? And I wanted to let folks know, the long-term plan was to restore the old dog park to wetlands as part of ongoing mitigation for having done our Bonner Bridge project. A lot of folks who are newer to the community may not realize that that entire area used to be one of the dumps for, timely with the presentation we just had, for the area, and then it was converted to landfill. So unfortunately, as they started that process to deal with the old dog park. They realized that they're a little closer than they thought they were to the old dump. So they've had to hit pause, and we're going through a process now to figure out what's the best move forward. But that's why folks who've been curious about what's going on out there, that's what's happening. So it's in a big pause for a bit. And then getting a lot of questions about the March election and the vacant seat that was held by Kevin Haroff. And so wanted to let folks know that the special election is March 5th, 2024, to fill that vacancy and complete the term. The nomination period is going to open on November 13th, and it will run through December 8th. The city clerk will schedule appointments with interested individuals to go through the process of pulling papers, and then what the process will be to file papers. So the easiest thing to do if you're wanting an appointment is to email cityclerk@cityoflarkspur.org or call 927-5002. That's the clerk line. And as all four of you know, there's a lot that goes into pulling papers and filing papers. Some of the details, costs, et cetera, haven't quite been worked out and published yet by the county registrar. So we need probably another week to 2 weeks before we'll have all of that information to distribute to the public. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions from the council?
So that would be through 2026. 2026. So it would be a 2-year term. Okay. Yeah, I think that's when his term expired. Yeah.
Yeah, December.
That sounds right to me. I'll double check. Yes.
Okay.
December 2026, I think so. Any other questions?
Is there any update on the timing for the other issue that's going around? Citizen driven petition and referendum?
I haven't heard of a citizen-driven
Well-
petition, but there is a referendum that was filed with the city clerk. The referendum is for ordinance 1067, which is the rent stabilization ordinance. What's called a preliminary count, just to determine if there were sufficient signatures, found that there were. So the signatures are now at the county registrar to be compared to people's actual registration cards to validate the signatures. The registrar has till November 9
November 9th.
to complete that process. Doesn't mean it won't happen sooner, but that's the deadline legally for them to complete the process. According to law, that needs to go on the next council agenda. So
It's the 18th, I think.
it would be, if we get it soon, it might be on the November 1 council meeting. If we get it after that window, it probably is the November 15 agenda.
And that's a regularly scheduled meeting. We don't have to hold a
Right, that's
extra
correct.
one. Okay.
That's correct. And then at that meeting, the council will have, if
If it
it
qualifies.
comes back to you, it means that there's enough valid signatures to go on the ballot. So at that time, the council would have the choice to either rescind ordinance 1067 or schedule it for election. You are supposed to schedule it for the next regular council election, which is November 2024. However, you have the option to schedule it sooner, and because there is a March election, you could place it on the March ballot if you so choose.
That helps. And is the same deadline apply for the December, is it deadline December 8th to decide that, or is there a different deadline to decide?
Should you want to place it on the March 2024 ballot, we need to tell the registrar by December 8th.
December, okay. I just needed to get a lot of questions on these dates and I didn't know.
Sure.
So we need to know to the registrar by December 8th
To be on the March ballot.
to be on the March ballot. Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask
Sorry. Lisa, were you
Just one last thing.
done? Let's-
By December 8th, does let's hypothetically say we want to put it on a March ballot. By December 8th, does the language have to be, does all that sorting of the language have to be done so that it's a clear and concise item that would go to the ballot, or does that take time to do that later?
My understanding, the city attorney could tell if wrong, there are some preliminary filings that need to be done by December 8th.
Okay,
He, as city attorney, would then write some analyses that I believe could trail that date. But the ballot
the
question.
ballot question has to be done by the, okay. Boy, it's a tight time frame. That's why nice to know those dates. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, sorry. Yes, Vice Mayor, please.
Okay, first of all, can I just ask, the mics are a little hot up there. Is it possible just to turn them down? We're getting a little bit of feedback.
Oh,
All right. No,
that's a
no,
musician with the hot mic
Sorry,
over
sorry,
there.
it's okay. So questions, the first is, my understanding is once, starting right now, that there's basically a freeze on the ordinance, meaning it's not in effect right now. And my question is, if the signatures are validated, does it stay not in effect until the elections? If we choose the March election, it's put on hold till March, we choose November, it's until November?
That's essentially correct. The ordinance is suspended. It can't be implemented until the resolution of the process. So that conceivably means an election occurs. Yes.
Okay, and second thing, I just wanted to ask, we have been getting lots of emails of people who feel that they signed petitions under misrepresentations and asking our guidance. Would it be appropriate to address that? What would be, or maybe Sky, I don't know if he'd be the right person to ask you, but I feel like we should respond in some way. I don't want to ignore these people's emails, but I'm not exactly sure the best way to address it. So I just wanted to get your advice on that.
The emails that are coming into the city would fall into two general categories. One is just folks who are upset and feel they did not understand what they were signing for whatever reason. Those emails are what I would call a very general complaint. So those are being logged. A handful of emails have come in who are stating that the behavior of the canvassers was fraudulent. Those individuals are being provided the information to file a complaint, a formal complaint, which is a legal matter. And if for that group, we will process those complaints. They're being processed through the police department, through the police authority, who my understanding is we'll send them to the district attorney's office.
Thank you.
Just that brought up one more question I had. Just the timing wise, an ordinance, once it's approved by a city council and there's a citizen driven referendum like this, it's a window of 30 days after approval, or is there a greater window in which another petition may be drawn?
Yeah, let's try to be careful here.
Okay, I'm saying the wrong words.
A referendum had to occur within the 30 days.
30 days, okay,
A petition, which is what occurred in Fairfax, is a different legal process.
okay.
And I think this isn't the time, if you want to, sorry, I'm having a lot of trouble with my voice. If you want to do that kind of discussion, we should get this on the agenda.
Yeah. All right, I
Right.
definitely wanted to just know dates because
Just for summary though, I know we have a lot of folks that want to compare everything that's happening here to Fairfax. That was a petition process. We're subject to a referendum process. They're not the same.
okay, thanks.
How many have been referred to the police department?
I don't have a count. 2 or 3, I think, have probably been referred to the police. 4, 3. Our interim city clerk is telling me 3. And that's because, again, they have specifically said they feel there was fraudulent behavior. 2 of them, I saw the complaints, then they had looked up the law and felt that there was a violation.
Quick question, the other ordinance, the Just Cause, I believe 1068, is that one 30 days has passed, no petition I'm sorry, no referendum was filed. So that one is currently in force.
That's been part of the municipal code since August some. I'd have to look up the exact date. I want to say August 20, but
Okay, great. So you had followed the vote, which I think we did in July, 30 days after. Okay, great. Okay,
That petition and referendum mixed up.
Catherine's telling me to move on. So I think we're done with the city manager's oral report, and we'll move to council members' oral reports and comments. Anybody want to talk about?
Time.
Yeah, you want to give it a go?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, I'll say briefly, I was at the SMART meeting today, and the SMART train has been in the paper a lot. The Marin grand jury had challenged or wanted the SMART staff to really look at their viability beyond the tax measure. As a kind of minor, I'm having problems with my throat too. As a minor measure, I decided to hold my office hours, which I do on Tuesday. I held them on Friday on the SMART train, and just had a list of 60 seniors, and 20 showed up, 13 on one day and 8 on their own. And it was just a wonderful experience to do office hours outside the chamber. And for me, it was a little bit of my entrepreneurial spirit of, putting up a trial balloon, whether the 174,000 seniors in the combined Marin and Sonoma may actually be a part of the future and of ridership for SMART. And from discussions, I brought my Pete's coffee, and everybody got a bit of coffee. Maybe that's why I got turnout. And then we went up to Hamilton and at a restaurant. And I think a lot of people found that this was a service that they loved, that they would use it again. It was the first time. I think they really have to solve the last mile. I think they have to invite that community, which does it for recreation, as to what the attractions are. If you go up to Novato, if you go up to Petaluma, if you go up to Santa Rosa, what would you do and why? And then just to publicize. But I think that was, rather than just being a board member and nod my head, I really wanted to offer something that may give staff a direction for marketing. Other than that, I have nothing, and we can move to the next.
I forgot one thing, if you'll indulge me, Mr. Mayor. I forgot to acknowledge that our refresh of our website launched, and we made the decision, I should say, the team, I think Shannon O'Hare, the assistant city manager, she led the team, decided the best thing to do was to get the visual improvements done. And now they're going back and working on some of the navigation. So if folks have comments about navigation, we're happy to hear them. Doesn't mean we necessarily going to implement everything, but I think it visually works a lot better. It definitely looks a lot better on different, as you move across devices, which was the big goal that we were trying to do. We've also been trying to just find every broken link. So if someone finds one, please let us know so we can get that fixed.
That's great. And I guess just to tag on, I think there have been a couple comments about content. And I think your point and Shannon's is that this has been a change of presentation layer of style sheets and so forth, but not the content. And that's coming soon. So it looks great. Thank you, guys. So then we'll move from council member oral reports to public hearings, which there are none. And that takes us to our last item tonight, which is a business item 8.1. A presentation on potential Marin County merger with Napa Sonoma ADU Center for Accessory Dwelling Unit Assistance. And we have our wonderful Community Development Director, Elise. Let's get a staff report.
I'm just going to kick this off with some data before I hand it over. With some numbers of how many units have been produced in Larkspur since or during this housing element cycle. And so the city, the numbers have increased significantly due to new state legislation, with the first uptick in 2017 after the laws that really relaxed parking standards for ADUs. And then in 2020, when the number of bills were passed that essentially allow an 800 square foot unit with reduced setbacks on every single family and multifamily lot, the city's seen a large increase in the number of permit applications. The current housing element had a goal to produce 16 ADUs and 20 were completed. And in total, over the last 9 years, the city had 44 applications and issued 33 permits, with the highest number just in this past year. The city received 19 applications for ADUs. And we expect that number to at least maintain steady, though the current number because of the housing laws, but they may even increase now that units are also allowed in Madrone Canyon, which opens up another neighborhood for accessory dwelling units. As you know, the city has a regional housing need allocation of 979 units, and ADUs are permitted to be used towards that number. The city currently, the draft that you'll be seeing hopefully soon, housing element has a program in order to affirmatively further fair housing, which states that the city's seeking to create equitable and inclusive neighborhoods by promoting mixed income neighborhoods with an equitable distribution of housing types for people of all incomes. And ADUs are definitely a feasible way to develop new affordable units in our single family neighborhoods. The total of 48 units that are proposed in the draft housing element is based on our permitting since 2018, which meets the methodology that the state allows for how many units we could say would be built. They wouldn't buy the number if we said we're going to keep doing 19 a year because or every year because we don't have that history yet. However, we could increase the number if the number is also associated with resources and incentives to encourage development of ADUs. And the presentation that you're going to receive tonight on the merger with the Napa Sonoma ADU Center could be one of those resources. So I'm going to turn this over to Jillian Zeiger. She's a senior planner with the County of Marin, and she's going to tell you more about this program.
So yeah, I'm Jillian Zeiger and I think she's like, okay. And I'm with the Community Development Agency at the County of Marin. And I also staff the Housing Working Group, and that's all of the planning directors. We actually met today, meet once a month to talk about housing issues. And we've worked on a lot of group projects together, including the ADU website, which is adumarin.org. So, sorry, can everyone hear me? I'm not used to having a mic. Maybe I'll take it off. Okay. So Marin, Napa, and Sonoma counties all share similar housing challenges, including a shortage of affordable housing options and increasing demand for housing units. So the Napa Sonoma ADU Center has been successful in promoting the development of ADUs, but a merger would enable Marin County to leverage the strengths and the knowledge and resources to address these challenges in Marin more effectively. And I'm really impressed by Larkspur's data around ADU production. So that's great. So tonight I'm going to talk about the programs and resources that we could potentially have with a merger, what the budget would look like, timeline to merge if all of the jurisdictions are amenable, and then next steps in the process. So the Napa Sonoma ADU Center has a lot of key programs and resources. It's really important. I was looking at Larkspur's housing element, and a lot of the jurisdictions in Marin County share a goal for more ADU production as part of their housing element. I noticed that Larkspur wants to have a workshop as part of that, and that they also are interested in doing more outreach. So the center is equipped to do affirmative marketing, to do outreach in other languages, to really affirmatively further fair housing. So what's great about the ADU Center is that it's technical assistance for homeowners. I think we know that a lot of people who own homes in the county might be interested in building ADUs, but they don't know where to start. It's possible that their biggest construction project was redoing a bathroom or a kitchen, and this is a much bigger endeavor. So, as great as our city planning staff and building staff are, a lot of times people need even more handholding in this process, and it includes a feasibility analysis. So technical assistance for homeowners is really important in order to build ADUs. But it's also really important to have technical assistance for jurisdictions. A lot of the cities and towns in Marin County have a smaller staff, but they are receiving so many questions about ADUs every day. I'm not even in the current planning division, but because my name is on the ADU Marin website, I receive so many emails about ADUs every day, and just fielding those takes a lot of time. And if we were to merge, that's something that staff at the merge center would be able to take on. So I think a burden would be lifted from staff for those everyday ADU questions. There's also a standard plans program, which is something that a lot of jurisdictions in Marin, and I believe Larkspur as well, have in their housing element to say, here's a standard plans package that someone could use in order to make it easier for them to build ADUs. There's also a loan program through the Napa Sonoma ADU Center. It's funded by the Napa Community Foundation, because I think some critics of ADU development say, well, the ADUs aren't being used for housing. So having the loan program would guarantee that they would be used for housing, whether that's a deed restriction or some other form of regulation or regulatory agreement that we would have as part of the loan document. So because it's really important to have ADUs that are rented, but also to have affordable ADUs. And then on the right-hand side, I'm showing all the resources that would be provided to community members. Something like a vendor registry. Some people don't even know where to find a contractor. But I think what's most important is feasibility consultations for homeowners. And we'll also continue. So the ADU Marin website has an ADU calculator, and it has local ADU rules like local ADU ordinances. And it also has an ADU workbook that could be really helpful for a homeowner to print out or download on their iPad and kind of go through checkbox to make sure that they're on their way to building that ADU. So I wanted to share some of the numbers from the Napa Sonoma Center over the past 20 months. They've had over 400 consultations, 600 inquiries, which that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure if you ask Elise how many ADU questions she gets, 29 webinars, which is great. With the webinars that we had for the ADU Marin Center, I think we had over 300 people attend the 3 webinars that we had when we launched ADU Marin website. And then they've had a lot of in-person events, and Scott Johnson, who's the executive director of the Napa Sonoma ADU Center, who would potentially direct the merger, said that people are actually coming to his events from Marin, and they're saying, why do we have this here? So there's an increased demand. And then a lot of standard plans have been issued, and designers have been contacted. Okay, so let's get to the budget. So for the first year, the county and the Marin Community Foundation would like to make this free for the jurisdictions. We are asking, as part of our schedule, we would start the merger in January of 2024. And I think it puts a lot of burden on the jurisdictions to say, hey, can you fund this when it's outside of that budget cycle? So that would be the first year. The second year, we are asking the jurisdictions to start contribute funding, and it would be around $15,000 per jurisdiction. And the third year would be around $19,000 per jurisdiction. So we would go, if this merger were to happen, we would go to the Board of Supervisors with a 3-year contract. I think it's a great value. It costs around $900,000 to build an affordable housing unit in Marin County. So if you're paying $15,000 to let people build potentially affordable units themselves, that's a great investment. And then potentially $19,000 the next year. So yeah, we think, and I've talked to all of the jurisdictions about this. I presented it a couple of times to the planning directors, and we're all in agreement that the budget makes sense. And also the Marin Community Foundation is contributing, and we hope that they would contribute after this 3-year mark. And we're also in talks with them and also thinking about regional funding for a loan pool of our own. So in terms of timeline, we are I'm going to jurisdiction councils like yourself and just talking to city managers and council members in other jurisdictions in October. We are looking for signed letters of intent. These letters of intent aren't legally binding because for the first year, like I said, the county would foot the bill. And then in November, bringing that contract for the ADU merger to the Board of Supervisors, if all of the cities and towns, or even most of the cities and towns are on board. And then starting that process of establishing a new organization in December. And we would work with a subcommittee of the Housing Working Group. So about 3 of the planning directors or community development directors would work with me on that merger. And then in early 2024, launch the new website and their new rebranding. And then by mid 2024, the jurisdictions would go to their councils with a budget request for 2025 and have 6 months or maybe a little bit less of data to show to the council. So next steps, just review the letters of intent and sign letters of intent and establish a subcommittee. This is a snapshot from their website with the ADU plans gallery. And it's pretty cool. You can click on your jurisdiction if you live in Napa or Sonoma and see which plans have been approved by your jurisdiction and how much they would cost to build. Or is it prefab? Is it constructed on site? So I think a lot of really useful information for the homeowner. And yeah, that's it. Any questions you have?
Great, thank you, Julian. So questions?
I have some.
Yes.
Couple questions. First of all, in the budget, it looks like you're talking 187 or something jurisdictions that would be part of this between the 3 counties at $15,000. Is that a standard for everyone, not per capita of the size of the city? So Larkspur would pay the same amount that San Rafael or Novato would, even though they're 4 times bigger.
Yes. And the reason that we are approaching it this way is because we want to make sure that each jurisdiction has the same level of service. We don't know, like in Larkspur and San Rafael could have the same number of ADUs that are being produced every year. So the reason we're doing it that way is because, and this is also how it was done before the merger, Napa and Sonoma, because they found that, I think the first year they did it based on population, and they found that they were getting questions from all of the jurisdictions. It didn't matter how many, how much potential for ADU in the jurisdiction.
So has there been any mapping of how many buildable lots there are? Because Larkspur has a lot of really tiny lots and which would not accommodate an ADU. Has there been any type of mapping to see how many parcels are ADU available or potentials?
There hasn't, but I do want to mention that even if the lots aren't big enough to support a new ADU, someone could always convert existing square foot or, but I mean, it's a good question. And some of the jurisdictions have brought it up, but ultimately the planning directors kind of want to do it just equally.
Yeah, I see that. It's just that, I mean, there's a lot of rural lots in Sonoma and Napa County that aren't here in Larkspur that just trying to see if it's equitable for our residents to pay an amount that they may not get the benefit from, but I'd like to see a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and this is our budget. Napa and Sonoma are actually funded differently. This is just the Marin County jurisdiction. So in Napa and Sonoma, and I can ask Scott, who's the executive director, to provide more information. But in Napa, it's actually funded completely by their community foundation.
Okay, that wasn't clear for me on here. So the data you're showing here is just for what we're going to be doing here.
This is just the Marin jurisdictions. Yeah.
Is he able to get you on camera? I don't know, because you don't appear to be on camera. Is that okay? Or I don't know if you wanted to be, but
I'm okay.
And second, you talk about on page 7, ADU plans gallery, find your plan. how are these particular companies vetted? Or are there more that are available? Because I know there are dozens of ADU designers now. I just came back from the League of California Cities meeting and had lots of vendors. How is like Abode or you or whatever this one's called? How are the vendors which have pre-approved plans? How are those decided?
They're actually vetted by all of the cities and towns. So each of the cities and towns vet based on, actually their building department and planning department would vet the pre-approved plans.
So these are just samples right here of a couple of them. What if somebody had a vendor that they wanted to use? Would they have to go through this pre-approved plan process?
No, the pre-approved plans would just make it easier if
I see.
someone, let's say you have like
So
a
off the
flat
shelf.
lot or, yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Okay, just an off the shelf kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but if somebody actually wanted to use a different vendor,
Oh, yeah, that's possible. And that's something that we don't want to discourage the ADU development that's already happening in the county. This would just be to help people who don't have that
yeah.
option.
And then just my last question, can you elaborate on the comment you made about taking out a loan or having a financial arrangement with a guarantee that then the unit that's built will actually be used for housing as opposed to, you know, a she shed or or a home office, which I know a lot of people are building them for home offices.
Yeah, and I actually have some statistics here because I thought that those questions might be asked. And it turns out that according to surveys done by the Turner Center and Community Center Collaborative, which is a former they're a consultant that used to be called Baird and Driscoll, of the ADUs that are used for housing, 60% are rented to those at or under 80% area median income already, which is great. But like you said, we're trying to encourage people to use them for housing and not for like a gym or an office or something. So there are a couple of ways that the loan could regulate. One is a deed restriction. The other is income reporting, whether that's self-reporting by the homeowner or it's required by the loan every year, every 5 years. In Napa, I believe it's a lien placed on the property. And once the loan is paid off, they no longer have to rent it. But I think as a group of the cities and towns, we would want to explore how to regulate that. But there are a couple of different options.
Okay. If that's it, Councilmember, yes. Okay, Vice Mayor Kendall.
I actually have a question for our staff. Do you feel like we need this? I mean, are we at a point right now where our staff is overwhelmed with ADU questions? We feel unqualified to answer them.
So I think we are handling the questions. We do get a lot of questions about it. And as you can see from the numbers, these are just coming in without any effort on our part to try to promote them. So yes and no. This would be useful to property owners that need more help. So the ones that aren't hiring architects, there may be an effort, or it may be an opportunity to encourage homeowners who maybe don't have the funds to just hire an architect and build an office or something to come in. It would make it maybe easier for some people who are on the fence about it, and there would be more promotion. So we could see our numbers increase potentially if they were offering workshops and just getting the word out more to encourage people to do that. Because I think some people may know how easy it is now to get an ADU permit, but not everyone may know that. They may still be believing that they're very difficult to get approval for.
So if we were going to make a choice of, let's say we as a council said we want to invest $15,000 a year into helping people get their ADUs or get information about it. And we could either do it ourselves, by,
Right.
just contracting out to have presentations or joining this
Holding
group.
Holding our own workshops, completely possible to do that as an alternative.
Which would you prefer?
Well,
Or is that a tough
I-
question? We don't have to answer. it. I'm just trying to.
One thing too, when you're looking at the numbers, I didn't bring any numbers on the permit revenue from generating ADUs, but it may, if it resulted in more ADUs than what we're currently generating, it may pay for itself in permit fees.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, did you have a?
I do.
Comment.
I think there's some inherent value to a third party that's promoting the concept of ADUs, and it's not your staff that's necessarily having to fill that role. Because when you take a look at the material for this entity, there's a promotional aspect of it that we would just never do. It's not the way government operates. And I think there's some value that we can't capture or quantify necessarily for you, but I think by Marin joining this collective will benefit as a whole from that.
I think I share Councilmember Wade's concerns that as a smaller jurisdiction, I question the fairness of it being split, just all jurisdictions contributing equally as opposed to something that would be a little bit more equitable based on the numbers. And I just want to get staff's feedback because it's really to help staff deal with potential questions and issues coming up. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So if I could just comment on it right now, if you are supportive of this, then the directions to send a letter that says we're interested, we'd like to be part of this. But I think one of the dialogues that we could have is maybe it's equitable now. And then in 3 years, we'll sit down and say, you know what? The smaller communities are not using this resource as much. So maybe we need a different system. But I think getting it in the door would then let us see in real, with some real world data, whether or not that.
So it would be a year-to-year commitment.
I don't think we'd want to do that because I think generally programs like this need time to mature and grow. And so even though this has existed in Napa and Sonoma already, to bring in the Marin component deserves a couple of years to, but I think we could have that discussion with all of the entities about whether or not the cost sharing model should be revisited after a few years.
Okay.
Do they need all the jurisdictions, 11 cities and towns in this county to
I
approve
don't
it?
have to defer to
Sorry.
Jillian for that one.
We don't need all of them to. It would affect the budget, and I would get back to Elise and Dan if that were to change. But I can tell you that all of the jurisdictions except for San Rafael participated in the ADU Marin website. About 3/4 of the questions I get about ADUs are in incorporated San Rafael, just to let you know, so if jurisdictions opt out, we're still going to hear from residents about it. But in my conversations with all of the jurisdictions, I think they're on board with this. They're either in the process of having me come to council to present, or their city managers are just signing the letter of intent. And in terms of the contract, we are looking at a 3-year contract, and I like the idea of revisiting the funding structure after that time.
I like that too.
Yeah.
I do think Jillian made a great point that I don't want you to lose sight of too. If you get one ADU that decides to be built with a loan and some restrictions, and we know it's for housing, you've returned on $15,000 investment.
Yeah.
If you just think about what affordable housing costs to build, I think that was an excellent point. That would be a huge return. So from that perspective, it's just not a lot of money.
I had a couple questions if there are no others. Jillian, maybe you can help me understand the economies of scale better. So I'm referring primarily to your slide number 3. And so joining the group Napa, Sonoma, Marin, the key programs on the left there are things that we don't really have, or I'm trying to get because let me just reframe the question briefly. We could take $15,000 and also put it on the Marin website. So Marin ADU, for example, when you go to the cost calculator, has nothing for local stuff. And Novato has impact fees, and they're different in South Marin. So it's only helpful so far. And as you start generalizing this to the region, the 3 counties, I think it's harder and harder to fill in the gaps. So some things don't scale versus other things, a webinar does scale. So I'm trying to understand what the synergy is. Like if you guys do this, what do you let them do? Where are we really sharing and pooling resources?
So just to answer your question specifically about the calculator, we actually surveyed all of the jurisdictions and asked for their fees, and they went into the calculator. So I think in terms of fees, entitlements for ADUs, it's actually pretty accurate. What is less predictable with the calculator is the cost of construction and the environment. So, I live in Fairfax where everyone lives on a hillside. If you're building an ADU on the hillside, and I know Larkspur has a lot of hillsides as well, when you're building an ADU on a hillside, it's going to cost a lot more, and it could cost a lot more if it's a 40% slope versus a 20% slope. So I think, the calculator definitely has its pros and cons. I think what's nice about these resources is that we'll have people who are helping with the feasibility assessment and the technical assistance for the jurisdictions. And if we merge, they're going to hire more staff. But what I like about the Napa Sonoma ADU Center is that their executive director has a lot of experience working in Marin. I think he grew up in Marin as well. So it would be easy enough for him because he already has an understanding of Marin. I would be a little more hesitant if the director and the staff didn't have as much familiarity as they do.
So in a way, it would for your shop, it would free up your resources. You guys would say, look, go to this consortium, go to this group, and they're going to do what we did now. And it supposedly would free up Elise too, because she would have to do it or go to you. So, and I'm wondering, again, back to scaling, how many staff members do you use now for this?
Yeah, I mean, in unincorporated county, how many staff
Well, I'm
members are?
assuming the calculator is not just for unincorporated. You've got you have 10 out of
Yeah.
11 cities incorporated, I think. 11th is missing, which is San Rafael.
Yeah. It would free up some of my time as well, because as there's one aspect of, so there's a calculator, but we also, the ordinances from the jurisdictions change usually on a yearly basis, depending on HCD. So we have to upload and change all of those to our website too. And we don't just have an ordinance on the website. We have like an FAQ essentially for each of the jurisdictions, because as you may know, it's very hard for members of the public and myself to read some ordinances. So just making that clear takes a lot of work. But it also brings up the point that HCD is changing ADU legislation on a yearly basis. And it would be really nice to have the center and to have staff members there to bounce ideas off of. I don't know if this happened in Larkspur, but in a couple of jurisdictions in Marin County, they received letters from HCD saying that their ordinance was out of line with state law. So it would be nice to have that. It's also great to have someone who's just dedicated to ADU development. I mean, last time I talked to the executive director, he's like, oh, I'm going to an ADU summit in Southern California, and I'm learning from all of the jurisdictions who are building ADUs in Southern California. And that's not something that we're all able to do. I think the work that I do in housing, ADUs are just a part, they're just a piece of that puzzle of affordable housing. So it's not something that I can dedicate as much time as I want to, or as much time as the board wants me to, because I know that the Board of Supervisors is also really supportive of ADU development as a part of this affordable housing puzzle. So,
okay. So I guess the worry about fragmentation, overloading the bandwidth of staff and being less efficient. I guess here there's state legislation, which a dedicated staff member would actually do better than, this being split up across 3 counties. And then, I suppose, some of these things like the plans, the vendor list, it's generally the sum is greater than the whole of the parts. So it really, and so if we in Larkspur or over in Fairfax, get stuff, Elise or their planning director would then refer no longer to you, but to this site, and that would be the sort of one-stop shop. And, you know, if the, you know, fees go down, they may go up if they have too much load. So it would just be a matter of, you know, so it's, yeah, kind of a shared resource. And you think, at least that we actually could be saving our staff time and getting better service.
Oh, definitely save our staff time. And then another piece that we definitely need are pre-approved plans. That's going to be something that state law now requires. And so we're going to have to pay for that at some point anyway. So that's another piece that we would get for part of, if we invested in this, is we'd receive that. And then even we are suggesting in the housing element that we do some workshops, and it would make it much easier if someone else was pulling those together, even if we're attending them to help.
Okay, great. If there are no other questions, I guess then are we looking to express interest in the letter? Yeah, how do you council members feel?
I think it makes sense. I do agree that 3-year window in which we reevaluate whether the cost sharing is equitable after 3 years is probably a reasonable thing to ask. Especially with once we have more data about how the utilization of this organization. I'm all about sharing costs, and consolidating the work. So into an expertise that would make it a little easier for our staff too. So.
Great, Scott.
I have heard our staff say that they feel that they're in favor of this, and I would defer to that.
Okay, Councilmember Carroll. Thumbs up. Okay, I feel the same. So I think, yeah, we're looking to
Thank you.
move this process and get a letter of intent ready. Oh, and now that we've reverted from democracy to monologue, anybody in the chamber wish to express any public comment? I think we're empty for those online. Okay, so seeing no public comment, that brings this item to a close, and that's but thank you so much, Elise, and thank you, Julian. So with that, I think we're at the end of our meeting, and the next regular meeting will be on November 1st. Until then,
And I'd like to adjourn in
Oh, I'm
honor
sorry,
of
yes.
a colleague. If that's all right with everyone.
Please, yes.
So we found out recently that Kay Coleman, who was the former mayor of San Anselmo, passed away at age 82. He used to live in San Anselmo, and she was considered kind of the mother of San Anselmo in many ways. So I had met Kay when I was first elected, and she was first elected to the council in 2009, and then reelected in 2013 and 2017. And when her husband became ill, Carter, I think was his name, they moved to Petaluma, and she retired from the city council in San Anselmo in 2019. But she stayed pretty tied in with the community, and a lot of people admire her. She was really very popular around this time of year, which is for the San Anselmo Halloween festival or parade. And she always dressed as this amazing witch and gave out candy. And she would have this dress with big pockets in it where she could give out candy. And she always face painted herself. She was always kind to me as a new council member, and very supportive of women being in this role. So she passed away a few weeks ago, and there will be a memorial service. It's public, and it's October 28th at the Santa Rita Catholic Church in Fairfax at 11 a.m. So I just feel like we, as council members, she was an honorable person and is very well missed in San Anselmo. And I think her public service to that town as a teacher and as a community member is exemplary for what we would like to support. So just in her honor, I'd like to close the meeting tonight.
Thank you very much. And so with that, we are adjourned, and we'll see you November 1st.